Have you ever heard the story of the Pomegranate Fairy? It's a tale whispered on autumn winds, a story as rich and jeweled as the fruit itself. Our story begins not in a grand castle or a mystical forest, but in a quiet, forgotten corner of an old orchard. Here, among the gnarled branches of ancient trees, lived a tiny fairy named Lyra. Lyra wasn't like the other fairies who flitted among roses and lilies. Her home was a single, magnificent pomegranate tree that stood proud and solitary at the heart of the orchard. This tree was her world. Its rough bark was her climbing wall, its broad leaves her parasols, and its crimson blossoms her ballroom. But Lyra's greatest treasure, the thing that made her the Pomegranate Fairy, was her connection to the fruit itself. She was born from the very first blossom of the tree, and her magic was woven into every seed. While other fairies tended to dewdrops and moonlight, Lyra's job was to care for the pomegranates, ensuring each one grew plump, juicy, and full of life. She would spend her days dancing from one burgeoning fruit to another. With a delicate touch, she'd polish their tough, leathery skins until they shone like rubies in the sunlight. She'd whisper secrets of the sun and the rain into them, encouraging them to ripen. And when the time was right, she would use her tiny acorn cap thimble to give them a final sip of morning dew, a finishing touch that made them burst with sweetness. The other fairies found her work odd. Why waste your time on such a tough, strange fruit? They'd ask, their wings shimmering with the pollen of more conventional flowers. Lyra would just smile. She knew the secret that lay within. One year, a strange stillness fell over the orchard. The rains didn't come, and the sun beat down with a relentless heat. The leaves on the trees curled and browned, and the flowers withered before they could bloom. The other fairies, their floral homes drooping, grew desperate. Their magic, tied to the delicate blossoms, was fading. The orchard, once a vibrant tapestry of color and life, was becoming a monochrome of dust and despair. The air, usually filled with the sweet scent of nectar, was thick with the smell of parched earth. Lyra's pomegranate tree, though hardy, was also suffering. Its leaves drooped, and the few fruits that had begun to form were small and pale. Lyra worked tirelessly, trying to channel all her magic into her beloved tree. She defended it from thirsty insects and shielded its branches from the harshest rays of the sun. But she was just one small fairy, and her magic was beginning to wane. Despair, a feeling she had never known, began to creep into her heart. She watched as the other fairies prepared to leave, seeking greener pastures beyond the dying orchard. As the last group of fairies gathered to depart, one of them, a rose fairy named Elara, flew over to Lyra. "Come with us, Lyra," she urged. "There's nothing left here. Your strange tree is dying like all the rest." Lyra looked at her home, her heart aching. She couldn't abandon it. "No," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "This is my home. I will stay," Elara sighed, a sad look in her eyes before joining the shimmering cloud of fairies that disappeared over the horizon. Now, Lyra was truly alone. Days turned into weeks. The orchard grew silent, save for the rustle of dry leaves skittering across the cracked ground. Lyra felt her own strength fading with her trees. One evening, as she rested wearily on a branch, a single tear fell from her eye. It rolled down the branch and landed on the largest, most stubborn pomegranate, which was still clinging to life. As her tear touched the fruit, a soft crimson light began to glow from within it. Lyra watched in amazement as the light grew brighter, pulsing like a tiny heartbeat. Intrigued, she tapped on the pomegranate's tough skin. A crack appeared, and the light spilled out, bathing her in its warm glow. The fruit split open, not with a crack, but by slowly unfurling its sections like a flower. And inside, where the seeds should have been, were hundreds of tiny, glowing jewels. Each one was a perfect, crystallized drop of life force, the very essence of the pomegranate that Lyra had nurtured for so long. She realized that the tree hadn't been dying. It had been concentrating all its remaining energy, all the magic she had poured into it, into this one final fruit. Carefully, Lyra plucked one of the glowing seeds. It felt warm in her hands. Instinctively, she knew what she had to do. She flew to the base of the pomegranate tree and buried the tiny jewel in the dry earth. As soon as it was covered, the ground around it began to soften. A tiny green sprout pushed its way through the soil, growing with astonishing speed. She flew back to the fruit, her wings buzzing with renewed purpose. One by one, she began to distribute the seeds. She planted them at the base of the withered rose bushes, the drooping apple trees, and the thirsty lavender sprigs. With each seed she planted, a wave of life-giving energy spread through the soil. The ground drank it in, and the parched roots of the plants began to revive. The dry, cracked earth turned dark and moist. It was slow, painstaking work for one tiny fairy, but she didn't stop. She worked through the night, a tiny, determined beacon of hope in the darkness, her path lit by the glow of the magical fruit. By the time the sun rose, the last seed was planted. Lyra, exhausted but filled with a triumphant joy, perched on a branch to watch the miracle unfold. As the first rays of dawn touched the orchard, it was as if the world had awoken from a long, feverish dream. The leaves on the trees unfurled, no longer brown and brittle, but a vibrant, healthy green. The rose bushes, once bare and thorny, were suddenly covered in buds that swelled and burst into a riot of color. The scent of blossoms, rich and sweet, filled the air once more. The orchard was alive again, more beautiful and vibrant than ever before, and in the center of it all stood Lyra's pomegranate tree, grander than ever, its branches heavy with a new bounty of ruby-red fruit. The other fairies, drawn back by the sudden explosion of life and magic, returned to the orchard. They stared in awe at the transformation. They saw Lyra sitting on her tree, her wings shimmering with a powerful new light. Elara, the rose fairy, flew to her. "Lyra," she said, her voice filled with wonder. "How did you do this?" Lyra smiled and gestured to the pomegranates all around them. "It's the secret of the pomegranate," she explained. On the outside, it may seem tough and unassuming, but inside, it holds a treasure trove of life, a multitude of tiny miracles. It teaches us that even when things seem dire, hope can be found in the most unexpected places. It shows us that true strength isn't always in the delicate petal, but sometimes in the resilient heart that holds everything together. From that day on, the pomegranate was no longer seen as a strange, humble fruit. It became a symbol of resilience, hope, and the hidden power that lies within. The fairies of the orchard learned to appreciate its strength and the quiet, enduring magic of the pomegranate fairy. And Lyra, the guardian of the ruby-red fruit, continued to tend to her tree, her heart as full and abundant as the seeds within her beloved pomegranates. A reminder to all that even from a single seed of hope, a whole orchard can be reborn. Thank you for watching this story. If you enjoyed this little piece of orchard magic, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales. Let us know in the comments what your favorite fruit is, and maybe we'll tell its story next. See you soon.